Well, since we're speaking of, an angle where someone passes away, the real life Sherri Martel lost her life on June 15th. I,
Ooh.
I'm not sure. Did you guys spend any time together in WCW? Were y'all just passing? Did you get to know Sherri at all?
I did get to know Sherri, and I'll tell you what, my first time I met her, it made such an impression on me because I was on the independent scene, and there was a real talented Long Island worker named Lou Fabiano, who became a buddy of mine. This is after I left Danucci School. I was always part of Danucci School, but I was getting bookings on the weekends. Once I finished college, I was no longer 7 hours away. I was 9 hours away back in the days of the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit. And it just didn't make sense for me to be driving out to Pittsburgh when I was getting booked, I almost every weekend. So Louis took me to a WWE show back when they would run 3 shows a night, and there'd be an A crew, a B crew, and a C crew. C crew ran high school gymnasiums, and they would have a handful of stars, but there'd be some local people on there, and it wasn't the A card, which had Hogan on it in the bigger arenas. And he was like, "Hey, I want to do Louis." He's like, I don't do a good Louis Fabiano. If you can think of an Italian guy from Long Island, that's Louis Fabiano, who later went on. He worked for Continental Championship Wrestling as the New York Thug, not the Brooklyn Brawler, the New York Thug. And then he also worked Puerto Rico quite a bit. Even though he's Italian, he was a Middle Eastern terrorist in Puerto Rico, only in wrestling, right? But he said he wanted to go to the show. He wanted to see Sherri Martel because they'd worked a couple of independent tours. And I'm thinking, Sherri Martel's a top flight talent. Lou is an enhancement guy from Long Island on the indie scene. And he knocks on the door, says, "Hey, can you tell Sherri that Lou Fabiano is out here?" And I don't expect anything. About 30 seconds later, that door opens up, and she's just, for those who knew her, she was such a charming, kind-hearted. She had that like infectious excitement. And she came out, she went, "Louie," and like wrapped him up in a big hug. And then he said, "Hey, this is my friend Cactus Jack." And she gave, "Oh, are you a friend of Louie? He's a friend of mine." And that was my introduction to Sherri. So she was always nice, always sweet. I'd heard rumblings that she, not just rumblings, I'd seen her when she was, taking too much in the way of pills. For someone who could be so, infectiously excited, I don't know if that's the right way to say it, whose excitement could be infectious. She could also get down pretty easily. I don't know if she was ever diagnosed with depression, but it seemed to me like she did go from high to lows during the time I knew her. But I saw her in action a lot. I think the high point for her was, as Shawn Michaels second, and then as Randy Orton second. But the stuff she did in WCW was excellent as well. And she was a wonderful person to have in the dressing room. Things weren't always going good in WCW, and so it was good to have somebody who was so positive there, put smiles on your faces. She was a great lady. I really liked her. I did not know her that well, but I knew her enough to consider her a friend.
Such a talented lady. I think it's a shame that more people don't talk about her now. I mean, I'm glad she got to go into the Hall of Fame and get her moment.
Yeah.
Man, imagine how much fun she would be having with women's wrestling being much differently